I just want to start with, is it time for the Democratic Party to become the free trade party?
Well, let me just say this. First, we know that this president has come up with these dangerous economic policies toward Mexico, Canada, and the EU and China. And so it's arbitrary. It was without the kind of input and the kind of professional assessment of what was going on with trade. He's kind of made up the numbers, and so we don't trust him.
Right.
But it is time for the Democrats to step up to the plate and recognize that these policies could be very dangerous to our economy.
Well, but Representative, the reason why I ask that is because traditionally Republicans have been thought of as the free trade party. And I'm just wondering, I mean, do you think that your fellow Democrats are going to try to adopt that mantle heading into the midterm elections?
We've always believed in trade, free trade, but we want fair trade. And yes, we're going to look at how we can have more free trade, how it can be fair, and we're not going to allow this country to be led by a president that we can't trust dealing with trade policies. These tariffs that he's placing on these countries because he decided that we did not have the kind of fair trade that he thought we should have. Not what we can depend on and not what we can count on. So we're in the discussion, and we're going to be looking at fair trade policy.
And I know that you had pressed the chairman on trade and to get his take on what trade would mean for the economy. Chairman Powell made all kinds of other headlines as well. Do you agree with his assessment that there's no indication a recession in the U.S. is imminent?
Well, here's what I agree on. When I talked with Chairman Powell about what he thought about the tariffs and what impact it would have on our economy, he basically said that it is unknown what long-term effects it will have on our economy. But he also said that, you know, when a country adopts a kind of protectionist stance toward trade, it does not lead to good ending, good consequences.
Representative, I want to switch gears a little bit. One thing that some of your fellow Congress people brought up today was the fact that real wages have not increased at all over the past year. And I'm wondering, what are you proposing to do about that, to try to increase wages more than inflation?
Well, yes, we are concerned that, you know, with this big tax scam that we had the major corporations of America have their taxes reduced from 35% to 21%, and many of our biggest banks in the country receive billions of dollars in tax breaks. And what did they do with that money? We don't see that reflected in the wages that they have. We don't see the wages are increasing. As a matter of fact, when you factor in inflation, they've decreased. And so we've got to pay attention to how this so-called tax reform, which we call a tax scam, is working in this country, and to whose benefit is it working. So we're going to stay on that. We're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be pressing these companies to increase the wages and not just use all of the new money that they have to buy back their stock and to give dividends, et cetera, et cetera. That does not help the average working person.
I hear what you're saying on that, but if the Democrats were to take the House in November, you would be in position to chair the House Financial Services Committee. What kind of policy could Democrats affect in order to increase wages, living wages for most Americans?
Well, as you know, one of the things that we have been focused on is all of the reforms in the Dodd-Frank reform legislation. And when we deal with that legislation, we get rid of a lot of the fraud that has been involved, based on what Wall Street has done, particularly with mortgages, where they had all of these exotic mortgages where people literally got tricked into signing on the dotted line for mortgages they could not afford. And so what we're going to do is pay attention to what has been going on in the financial services sector that caused people to have to spend more, to cause people to have been ripped off by certain industries. And this is going to keep money into families' pockets when we're able to save them from the kind of abuses that we have witnessed from Wall Street for far too long.
Representative, you're talking about President Trump's, the way he's dealing with trade internationally. I just want to head back to that for 1 second. If you were the chair of the House Financial Committee, would you recommend that no tariffs be applied? And would you try to renegotiate NATO? What would you do differently than President Trump?
No, as a matter of fact, I think that, the Fed and others, even though the tariffs are not under the Fed's jurisdiction, but we should always be aware of what is happening in our economy and what kind of relationships we have with other countries, whether or not they're being fair to us. We should always be into looking at and evaluating what the relationships are. I don't say we do nothing. Maybe we do, but we don't do it in the way that this president is doing. He literally has decided himself. This is his policy. This is not the policy of those who spend time doing the research and understanding what is going on. But we must always be in the position of evaluating, researching, understanding, and doing what is in the best interest of this country.